I'm Anthony, a 22-year-old student living in Los Angeles. You never think something like this will happen to you, especially not in college, but it did to me, and it changed everything. When I started college, I was really excited. Dorm life sounded fun, and my roommate, Ryan, seemed like a great guy. He was friendly, helpful, and we got along well. He even helped me set up my computer and organize my stuff. I thought I had lucked out with a good roommate. But then, weird things started happening. I began receiving credit card bills and loan statements for accounts I never opened. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Who wouldn't? I ignored the first few, thinking they'd get sorted out. But the bills kept coming, and they were all in my name. I started getting worried. Ryan, have you been getting weird mail lately? I asked one day, trying to make sense of it all. No, man. Why? He replied, looking genuinely confused. I showed him the letters, hoping he'd have some explanation. But he just shrugged and said it was probably a mix-up. The bills kept piling up, and it was really stressing me out. How could this be happening? One evening, I decided to call one of the credit card companies to straighten things out. That's when I found out that several accounts had been opened in my name. Someone had stolen my identity. I was in shock. How could this happen to me? I started paying closer attention to everything, trying to figure out how my personal information had been stolen. Then, I remembered that Ryan had been a bit too helpful when I moved in, offering to set up my computer and get things organized. I felt a pit in my stomach as I started to suspect him. Ryan, did you mess with my stuff when I moved in? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. What? No, why would you think that? He responded, looking offended. I didn't want to accuse him without proof, so I decided to set a trap. I left some important-looking documents on my desk and went to the library, telling Ryan I'd be gone for a few hours. But I didn't actually leave. I waited outside the door, listening. After about half an hour, I heard Ryan moving around inside. My heart pounded as I quietly opened the door and peeked in. There he was, rummaging through my papers, taking pictures of my personal information with his phone. Ryan, what the hell are you doing? I burst in, unable to contain my anger. He jumped, dropping the papers, his face turning white. Anthony, I can explain, he stammered. Explain what? That you've been stealing my identity. I yelled, grabbing the papers from him. He tried to deny it, but the evidence was right there. I was furious and scared. How long had he been doing this? How much damage had he caused? I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed my phone and called the campus police. Ryan tried to leave, but I blocked the door until the authorities arrived. They took him away, and I gave them all the evidence I had. It turned out that Ryan had done this before, using his roommate's information to open fraudulent accounts. He was arrested, and I had to spend months sorting out the mess he made of my finances. The whole ordeal left me paranoid about sharing personal details with anyone. I never thought something like this could happen to me, especially not from someone I lived with. It took a long time to trust people again. So, if you're moving in with someone new, be careful. You never really know who they are until it's too late. Always protect your personal information and keep an eye on your finances. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. During the months that followed, I became hyper-aware of my surroundings and my personal details. I changed all my passwords, got a new bank account, and even put a freeze on my credit. It was a nightmare, but it was necessary. Every time I got a piece of mail, my heart would race, fearing it was another fraudulent bill. One day, I got a call from a collection agency. They were trying to collect on a loan I supposedly took out. My stomach dropped. How did Ryan manage to do this without me knowing? I explained the situation to the agent, who thankfully believed me and put a hold on the collection. but it was a stark reminder of how deeply Ryan had infiltrated my life. "Why did you do it, Ryan? Why me?" I asked him during a court hearing, hoping for some closure. He just smirked and said, "You were an easy target, Anthony. Too trusting." That answer haunted me. I was too trusting. I thought everyone was as genuine as I was, but Ryan proved me wrong. In the end, Ryan was sentenced to prison for identity theft and fraud. I felt a small sense of justice, but the damage was already done. My credit score was ruined, and my trust in people was shattered. It took years to rebuild both. Now, I'm extremely cautious. I don't share my personal information with anyone, and I'm always on the lookout for signs of fraud. It's a tough way to live, but it's the only way I know how to protect myself after what happened. So, if you're reading this, remember my story. Be cautious, be aware, and never assume that just because someone seems friendly, they have your best interests at heart. Sometimes, the people who seem the most trustworthy can turn out to be the ones you should fear the most.
My name is Olivia, and I'm 24 years old, living in New York City. I was beyond thrilled when I finally found an affordable apartment in the city. Moving out of my parents' house and into my own space felt like the start of an exciting new chapter in my life. Little did I know, this chapter would turn into a nightmare. When I first moved in, everything seemed perfect. My roommate Ava was friendly and helpful. She even helped me move my boxes in and offered to show me around the neighborhood. Ava was in her late 20s, quiet, and kept to herself most of the time. At first, I thought we would get along just fine. But things started to change quickly. I began to notice little things that seemed off. My bedroom door would be slightly open when I was sure I had closed it. My belongings seemed to be moved around, but I shrugged it off as my imagination. Maybe I was just being paranoid in a new place. One night, I came home late from work, exhausted. As I collapsed into bed, I had this strange feeling that I was being watched. I brushed it off and tried to sleep. A few hours later, I woke up suddenly. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Ava standing at the foot of my bed, staring intently at me. "Ava, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't answer at first, just kept staring. Then she turned and walked out of the room without a word. I was too scared to move, my mind racing with questions. Was she sleepwalking? Or was something more sinister going on? The next morning, I confronted her. "Ava, why were you in my room last night?" She looked at me with a confused expression and said, "I wasn't in your room. You must have had a bad dream." I knew what I saw, but she was so convincing that I started to doubt myself. Maybe I did imagine it. But as the days went on, things only got worse. I would find my clothes scattered around, my drawers opened, and even my journal had been read. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I installed a hidden camera in my room. I felt a little guilty for invading her privacy, but I had to know the truth. A few nights later, I finally had my answer. I sat down to review the footage, and my stomach dropped. There was Ava, creeping into my room in the middle of the night, rummaging through my things. She would take out my clothes, my personal items, and inspect them carefully before putting them back. My heart pounded as I watched her approach my bed. She stood there for what felt like an eternity, just staring at me while I slept. It was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen. I couldn't believe I had been living with someone who could invade my privacy so blatantly. The next day, I packed my bags. I couldn't stay another minute in that apartment. As I was leaving, Ava tried to talk to me, but I couldn't even look at her. I felt so violated and scared. "Olivia, what's going on? Why are you leaving?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "You know exactly why, Ava. I've seen what you've been doing," I replied, my voice trembling. Her face turned cold, and she didn't say another word. I moved out that day, crashing on a friend's couch until I could find another place. It took me a long time to feel safe again. Even now, I can't shake the feeling of someone watching me while I sleep. I double-check my locks every night and installed cameras in my new place. Living with Ava taught me a hard lesson about trust and privacy. I thought I was just moving into a new apartment, but instead, I walked into a nightmare. So if you're ever looking for a roommate, be careful. Sometimes the most friendly and helpful people can turn out to be the ones you should fear the most.
I'm Dylan, a 23-year-old living in Seattle. I never imagined that finding a roommate would turn into such a nightmare, but here's my story. I needed a roommate to help with rent, so I found Mike through a mutual friend. At first, everything seemed fine. Mike was friendly and easygoing, and we got along well. It seemed like a good match, and I thought living together would be a breeze. But things changed quickly. Mike started having loud arguments with his girlfriend over the phone. The first time I heard him yelling, I was shocked. The arguments became more frequent, and Mike's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would smash dishes, punch walls, and throw things around the apartment. I tried to ignore it, hoping it was just a phase. One evening, I decided to talk to him about it. "Mike, are you okay? You've been really angry lately," I asked, trying to be gentle. He glared at me and snapped, "It's none of your business, Dylan. Stay out of it." I backed off, not wanting to provoke him further. But the violent outbursts continued. Every time he had a fight with his girlfriend, our apartment would be left in shambles. I started to feel unsafe in my own home. One night, things took a terrifying turn. I was in my room, trying to block out the sound of another argument, when I heard a loud crash. I went out to see what was happening and found Mike in the kitchen, holding a broken bottle. His face was twisted in anger. "Mike, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. Instead, he lunged at me with the bottle. I barely managed to dodge him, and he slashed at me again, cutting my arm. I was in shock. This wasn't just a tantrum. He was trying to hurt me. I ran to my room and locked the door, my heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and called the police, praying they would arrive before Mike could break down the door. I could hear him outside, shouting and banging on the door. "Dylan, you can't hide forever. Come out," he screamed. I stayed on the line with the operator, trying to keep my voice steady. "Please hurry. He's trying to break in," I whispered. The police arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. They took Mike away in handcuffs, still screaming and fighting. I gave my statement, my hands shaking as I recounted what had happened. The police took him to jail, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered sense of security. I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. The next day, I started looking for a new place to live. I found a small studio apartment and moved out as quickly as I could, leaving behind the memories of that terrifying night. The experience left me traumatized. I had nightmares for weeks, waking up in a cold sweat, hearing Mike's angry voice in my head. I couldn't believe that someone I trusted could turn violent so quickly. It made me wary of living with anyone else. Even now, I have trouble trusting people. I'm constantly on edge, waiting for something bad to happen. It's a horrible way to live, but it's the only way I know how to protect myself after what happened. So, if you're looking for a roommate, be careful. You never really know someone until you live with them. What seems like a minor issue at first can quickly escalate into something dangerous. Always trust your instincts and don't ignore the red flags. Living with Mike taught me a hard lesson about trust and safety. I thought I was just getting a roommate, but instead, I got a front row seat to a nightmare. If you're ever in a similar situation, don't wait. Get out before it's too late. Your safety is more important than anything else.